Hi, I'm Dawn, and this is where Shabby meets bling. In tonight's project, I'm going to be using a yard sale find. I actually showed it to you in last week's video, so now you'll see what I'm going to make with it. I also have been doing some more thrifting recently, as recent as yesterday, and I picked up this little broom for 50 cents, and I picked up this jack-o'-lantern for $2. No cracks, and it works. I am always on the lookout for items just like this. You know why?
Because in my house, it's always Halloween. I would like to thank my co-host Monica from Up All Night DIY for joining me tonight. You're going to find the links to her channel and this fabulously spooky playlist in my description box below. This is that item that I introduced to you in last week's video, the Savory Junior Roasting Pan. These were manufactured in the very, very early 1900s. So this thing is more than likely well over 100 years old. It has quite the history. And these things are valuable if you have the right colors. The black seems to be the most common, but they come in white and grays and even blue. As with all things old, it has quite an unusual history, and I found a few different articles about it, and one of the things that the Savory Junior boasts is that it will never dry out a chicken or a turkey, no matter what it does. Well, let's see what it does with a crow. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. First, we need to clean this Savory Junior roasting pan up, and I want to take nice care of this. Nothing is going to go in this thing permanently, so I just want to get the grease and the grime off of it and make it look like I just strolled into a shop in 1908 and picked up a brand new Savory Junior roasting pan. So I use some degreaser. This is a Zepp industrial degreaser, and a soft sponge because I don't want to scratch it. I mean, this thing has been around for how long? So, I mean, how much damage can I do to it, right? But I eventually take it over to the sink and use some foam Zepp degreaser on it and let it sit, and the grease just ran off of it. And are you noticing that this pan is not black? It is actually blue. It's one of the blue ones, which makes it more valuable. So I finished cleaning it up, because that's all I need to do to it right now. It's just going to set aside, and I'm going to turn my focus onto what is going to go inside the Savory Junior. What are we cooking? What's for dinner? I am going to make a crow from scratch. I don't have a large enough piece of styrofoam that's shaped the way I want it to be able to carve a crow. So I'm going to use some basic items to create my own mold and use my high density insulation spray foam to create a foam base, something that is going to be carved down into a crow. Now this football, it is from the Dollar Tree, so a real inexpensive little toy basically, and I'm using a foam cone that I had in my garage that I know I thrifted. But once again, not big enough to make a crow. So here I am cutting apart pieces that I am going to tape together and I'm going to place into this large silicone mat. Once all my trimming and taping is complete, I wrap them up like a little burrito or like a little foam crow taking a nap. I am using my clips, my paper clips, my large ones, to make a snuggy little mold, fitting it around that foam thing I created ever so tightly, because I want, when I remove it, and that's what I'm going to do, is this football foam monstrosity is going to be pulled from there, and I'm going to maintain the shape of the silicone. That's the key. That's the key. So I tuck it around and I clip it, and I make sure that everything is as firm against that football foam thing as possible. Once I get it clipped into place, I very, very, very carefully remove some of the clips and pull the football from the silicone mold, and then replace the clips exactly where they were. And once I remove that styrofoam and the football, then I will fill this thing with the foam insulation and set it aside and let it dry. And it has to dry for quite a long time. So this is what we get. When it's all said and done and the foam is dry, I remove my clips and you can see how it oozed out as it was filling that space. Now keep in mind, if you try this, wherever you put this to dry, make sure it's not on a good surface. Make sure it's on a surface that that foam is not going to stick to, and it sticks to most things. So silicone is your best bet. You can also put it on wax paper, but you can see this weird shaped pillow thing that I have. Now to do this, I used maybe 3/4 of a can of spray, which averages $4, so not even a full can. A piece of styrofoam this big probably would have cost me 10. So I have this blob of styrofoam, and in no way, shape, or form does it look like a crow. So I need to draw out the basic shape of a crow that I want. Just the form, that's all I need. I need it to have a head and a body because I will be adding wings, I will be adding its eye, and so forth and so on. So I draw a little sketch of like where I'm going to start chopping on this thing, and then we start cutting. As always, as I cut my forms, I keep all of my scraps. And really right now, I really need to keep every little foamy scrap that I come across and that I have left over from every project, because I am going to be creating a giant snowman, and I'm talking giant. I continue to define where I want my crow to be with the Sharpie and then with my knife. And I finally whittle it down to this point. I have given him some temporary legs just so he can stand while he's drying, and I've got something to hang on to as I paint. This is just kind of a primer coat, a base coat, and what I'm using is an interior black house paint from Walmart. It is a color place, and that's all this is the base coat. This will seal up his little pores, and it will also highlight any major holes that I have in him that I need to fill with one time. Once I have finished this first coat, that's exactly what I'm going to do, is fill all the little dents and divots and holes with one time. This step is kind of like icing a cake, and I decided to just use inexpensive spackling since I'm going to be painting over this, and I'm going to be flocking him. Not like traditional flock. I'm gonna try something different. I get bored so easy. So right now I'm just filling in all the little tiny cracks and crevices and holes and divots, and then we're gonna give him a really good sanding. Yes, we are. He needs to be smooth. Here he is after that really, really good sanding I gave him, and I'm back to that black interior house paint. And I will definitely be giving at least 2 coats because I want him coated thoroughly. Now, to give you an idea of what's happening with this little crow, and I've named him, I name everybody, they all need names so I know who I'm talking about. This is Edgar. Meet Edgar. He's not quite in full Edgar form yet, but he's getting there. He sure is. But take a look at this. He still needs some wings, but there's Edgar sitting in that savory junior roasting pan. Now for those wings. My first step is just to take some of my brown paper to create a template. By looking at Edgar as I draw, I am creating a wing pattern that will be in the shape I want and in the size I want. I'm only making one wing because I can flip it over and use it for the other wing as well. So one wing will suffice because they'll be mirror images of each other. Once I have perfected the shape I want, I cut it out. Once I have my wing cut out, I need to transfer it on to cardboard. I take my brown paper template and I tape it with painter's tape in a couple places onto some cardboard. I keep almost all really good scrap cardboard because I use it so frequently. I have a box with a handle and I just keep everything in there, and it's right handy whenever I need it. So I just bust it out. a couple of pieces of cardboard, and now I'm tracing that wing. Now, the details on this wing are so intricate that I'm using the hash method to trace it. I'm not trying to trace it all the way around because you're not going to get a perfect match. And you've seen me do this before. This is the way I get as close a match as possible to my original template. So I make little tiny hash marks all the way around my wing, and then I can cut this out. And once I have, I use my template to make a second wing, one that will be the mirror image of this wing. Back to Edgar. Here's 2 of his wings. I will make them 2-ply, like that bathroom tissue we all get. But this gives you a good idea of how he's going to be trying to pull himself out of this roasting pan, because he don't want to be in there. Someone told him it was a hot tub, and he's trying to make his escape. So we have to aid him in his escape by giving him some very sturdy wings. That made me think of a movie. Okay, forget that. That's a funny movie. Okay, role models. If you've never seen it, it's a little off, but it is funny. All right, back to the wings. Back to the wings. Now, since this is cardboard that I made the original wings out of, I can trace them knowing that I will get a relatively close match with my second wing. So I will trace each wing, and then I will cut both of them out, and then we're going to glue them together. I'm also cutting some wire, 2 pieces for each wing, to be sandwiched in between, because I want to be able to bend these exactly the way we need them to be so he can push himself out of that roasting pan. I also cut an angled piece of cardboard to go in between the 2 pieces of wire for even more stability. Then I glue all the components together, the 2 pieces of wire, the 1 piece of cardboard in between, and the 2 wings sandwiched together. And if you'll notice, the wire is protruding out from the end of the wing. This is how I will attach Edgar's wings to his little body. Once glued, I will use my lightweight spackling to fill the gaps in between each wing. The wire takes up a little bit of space, and of course it's going to leave a gap. So instead of gluing them together, I am filling them with spackling. That way they have even more dimension and won't look flat. Once my spackling is dry, it's time to paint. And look who we have here. We have the elusive Big Gut. He's a tabby and very rarely seen in the open. Curiosity has brought him out of the deep, dark shadows where he normally resides, and we get the opportunity to take a closer inspection of this very rare tabby cat. His name's Mac. His name's Mac. And he is the cat assistant of the moment, but he's really good. He doesn't try to get in my way. When he does, on the rare occasions, he does come up on my table. I am painting these wings with the same house paint that we painted Edgar to begin with. So same thing, we're just coating this a couple of times to make sure that both sides and both wings are completely covered. So, you know how I am with texture and dimension, and there is no way we're just going to let these be painted cardboard and painted styrofoam. No, siree, Bob. Nope. I am busting out my very inexpensive little coffee grinder and some black construction paper, and I am going to just puree the heck out of it, and we're going to get like fluffy kind of flocking stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, not your traditional flock, but something a little bit different. And it's going to give us a very unique and cool texture. Very cool. Once I've created a good amount of my little fluffy flock stuff, I am going to flatten it. I'm going to create kind of sheets. They're not going to be solid sheets, of course, but they will be sheets of this flat flocked substance that I'm going to Mod Podge onto my crow, little Edgar, and his little wings. To create the sheets, I lay out a plethora of the fluffy stuff, and that's what I'm going to call it, the fluffy stuff, and I put it as close together as I can without having lumps, or at least trying to. And then I'm going to use my brayer to roll it all flat. And this is what is going to semi-bind these things together until I get it podged onto Edgar. I am just using my Mod Podge, and I am coating his little wings And I'm gonna lay some of those sheets right down on top, and I once again will use my brayer to hold them in place. Now, you can make this fluff as dimensional as you want. You really don't have to use the brayer to roll it flat. You can let it stick up a little bit, but then you're really gonna have to wait a while before you paint it. And I am gonna paint it. It's very delicate. And even though I want my little crow, little Edgar, to look paper mache, he needs to have some kind of protection on that paper. Once I'm done with this side of this wing, I will set it aside and let it dry, and then grab the other wing and do one side of it. By the time I'm done with that, I go back to the first wing, flip it over, and do the opposite side. Any little extra of the fluff that's hanging off, I trim up, and then we give a coat of paint. Actually, a couple coats of paint. Once again, right back to that black interior house paint, and I cover both sides. Now, in the end, after I'm totally done, I will come back with a black Waverly chalk paint and paint Edgar and his wings, every bit of him, because I don't want any sheen at all. I really want this to look like it's paper mache. After I'm done with the wings, I move on to Edgar and I add his fluff. Then he will also get painted. Edgar needs a beak, so it seems to be beak time of the year. I made a beak last week for Ollie, and now Edgar gets his beak. I'm starting kind of the same way. I draw a straight line, and then I form kind of a half curvy V shape with a kind of half curvy extended U at the top. And then after I get that completed, I draw a smaller version of the same thing, because this will be dimensional. He'll have an upper part of his beak and the lower part of his beak, and I'm going to have it kind of open so it looks like, what am I doing in this pan? So once I get it drawn out, I fold it over and I cut it out so that both sides are the same. Just like when I made his wings, I start with the brown paper, and then I will transfer these shapes onto cardboard. Once I've transferred my shapes onto cardboard and cut them out, I cut out 2 identical size beak pieces out of my brown paper that are smaller, just a little bit smaller, because I'm going to use those to sandwich together, once again, just like the wings, a piece of wire so that we have wire to attach to Edgar. I am using one of the beefier Sharpies that has a different shape. It's not round. Those big Sharpies have like an oval shape to them and not a round shape. And I'm using that and a pencil to form the cardboard around. That way it gives the beak some shape. It gives it a beak shape, beakity beak. Once I have achieved a curve to both these pieces, I am going to glue, and I'm going to use hot glue, just like I did the wings. I'm going to hot glue the cardboard, and then inside that will be the wire, and then on top of that will be the brown paper, and I will glue all these components together. I'm getting ready to paint my beak, and of course I have another helper, but this one is not as mild-mannered or well-mannered as the other one, and just letting him get it out of his system so I can paint this thing. My first coat is with that black that is going to absorb into the cardboard, and that way I won't have to use so much of my next color. And what my next color is going to be is a plaid yellow ochre. I am not going to do the traditional black beak like crows and ravens generally have, because they do. I am going to make it a yellow beak. I am taking artistic license here, and I'm doing my own thing so that Edgar has a little pizzazz. Now that he has a beak, he needs some eyes. He needs to see what's going on so he can get out of that roasting pan. I'm using a couple of small wood balls from Woodpile, and I am hot gluing a piece of wire into the center of each wood ball. Once I have, look who's back. Once I have glued the wires into place, I will fill the other end with spackling. Once the spackling is dry, I can insert them into Edgar's noggin and paint them black, add a little highlight and a glossy Mod Podge to make them shine. Edgar cannot be the only thing in that roasting pan because that would be a really boring stew. So we need to add some more elements. I am going to add in some corn. So it's going to be corn and crow and maybe a couple other things we shall see, but I am going to make little tiny corn cobs. This is the dried stuff from last year that I kept because of course I keep everything, and I'm going to cut them into little wedges. Right here I am using my coping saw because I have never cut a corn cob before and these things are insane. So once I get through this one, all the rest of them are going to go out to the chop saw and get cut in a very quick, efficient way. I have drilled a hole into my tiny corn cob and I have placed some wire inside. This will aid in the drying because I can stick it in the side of my cardboard, plus it gives me a place to hang on to while I add my dimensional paint. I want to make Indian corn, so what I'm doing here is I have 3 different colors of paint. I have a yellow, I have an orange, and I have a brown. Now, the orange and the brown are the puff paint, and the yellow is just a slick paint. The only paint here that is tulip is the yellow. I've never worked with the other two before, so we're gonna see what happens. I am adding little dots that resemble little corn kernels here and there in a straight line, altering colors as I go to create the look of Indian corn. Taking a look at it right after I finished, it does not look bad at all. And it actually kind of looks like Reese's Pieces. Doesn't it look like a bunch of Reese's Pieces stuck together? But as these dried, they became super flat, not puff paint like at all. So I decided to change gears and I busted out my white tulip puff paint, and I'm going to do the same thing, but the whole cob is going to be done in this white tulip puff paint. I'll make kernels all the way down, row after row after row on all the different cobs, and then once totally dry, and it will take some time, this stuff takes a long time to dry, but once it's dry, I will come back and I will paint them yellow. I am abandoning the Indian corn idea and just going for your normal fall dried corn. Here's what they look like, and I'm really happy with the way they look now, so I'm super excited to get them painted. The paint I will be using is Goldenrod, a folk art matte paint by Plaid.
Everything's complete, it's all assembled, or should I say it's all prepared. Dinner's ready. Let's go take a look.
Say hello to Edgar. There he is, trying to hop out of that pan. Once he realized this was no hot tub, he woke up and smelled something good cooking and then realized it was him. And corn. Check out the corn. I am beyond thrilled with the way my corn came out. I am so glad I changed gears and went in a totally different direction by using that white puff paint. That's an old reliable for me, and it served me well today. I think this corn almost looks edible. You can see I added some little dried gourds and some other dried items as well as real corn husk. I think it looks pretty darn cute. I am in love with my little Edgar. He is pretty darn special. At some point, I may decide to give him tail feathers and put those legs right back on him. I am really always amazed at what can be with what can be made from styrofoam and cardboard. And that's basically all that you're seeing here. Styrofoam, cardboard, and yeah, paint, and that's it. This was a pretty easy project, and I hope you'll give it a try and make your own Edgar Poe stew this Halloween. Thanks again to Monica for joining me in this It's Always Halloween. You're going to find the links to her channel and this playlist in my description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, share it with your family and friends and anyone that likes DIYs, thrifting, repurposing, yard sales, or fun and Halloween decor. You can follow me on Instagram, and don't forget to check out my shop on Etsy. Leave me a comment. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Ring the bell for notifications of all my upcoming videos. Subscribe. It's a great way to support my channel. But for now, this is Dawn with Shabby Meets Bling. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.